Hey everyone, Sylvie here. I have another somewhat off-the-wall video for you guys here, but I have decided recently that I'm just going to go ahead and start doing videos of whatever comes to me, whether it be weird or something that's not really being discussed a whole lot. It doesn't matter. I'm just going to go ahead, I'm going to do the video, and if you guys enjoy the video, that's great. If you don't, that's fine too. I'm just going to play it by ear and we'll just see what happens, okay? So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and jump straight into this video. This is actually a case that has bothered me for years, but it happened quite some time ago, so I wasn't really having a lot in the way of visions around other people's situations. It was when I was younger, and that was mostly I was getting visions around myself and my family. So I don't know that I really ever followed the case in a psychic or paranormal type of way, if you will, but I was always intrigued by the case, and it is a strange case indeed. And I am talking about the case of JonBenet Ramsey. Such a sweet little girl. Now, like I said, her case did occur quite some time ago. It was in 1996. So we are talking about 26 years ago. If you are around my age in your mid-40s, then you most likely do remember the case. You would at least remember it making national news. It was a huge ordeal back then when it first happened. If you are on the younger side, then you may or may not be familiar with the case because there are things that do come up periodically. And John Ramsey, JonBenet's father, has, in all of this time, he has still been trying to get answers about the case. So occasionally interviews come up with family members, and sometimes people refresh the public's memory of the case with articles and things of that nature. And I actually have seen several videos and articles within the last month or so. And that's actually kind of what prompted me to do this video, because I have started getting some feelings and some visions around the case. What I set out to do was to kind of compile a timeline of things that had happened in the case since it was such a long time ago, not only to let people who weren't familiar with the case know what the basics of it were, but also to refresh the memory of anybody who was familiar with the case but couldn't really remember the details. And then, of course, to refresh my own memory as well, because, like I said, I had followed it, but it's been a pretty long time since I looked into the actual specifics of the case itself. But while I was doing my research, I actually found an article that was put out just a few days ago by Court TV, and they have drawn up a timeline, and I really just don't think that I could do much better than the timeline that they have already compiled in their article. So I'm just going to go ahead and go over that article with you guys, not the whole thing because it's actually pretty extensive, but just the first 2 or 3 minutes of it, because I think that it provides a lot of details that I even probably wasn't aware of when the case first was reported in the news. I also want to mention really quickly that part of the reason that the case was such a big deal was because not only did it involve a 6-year-old little girl, but she was also a little girl that was involved in child beauty pageants. So she had participated in, I think, 9 or 10 beauty pageants. She went to a dance school, and that was something that was very controversial at the time, and honestly probably still is, because people didn't know whether you should be putting young girls into these beauty contests and things of that nature. Now, her parents, both her mother and her father, both said repeatedly that JonBenet loved to do those pageants, that she was not being forced to do it, that she loved the singing, she loved the dancing, she loved the dressing up, and it's entirely possible that she did. But I do find it interesting that I found a little blurb in another article, which I didn't actually include in my research here, but I found in another article a little blurb that said that Patsy Ramsey, JonBenet's mother, had also been in beauty pageants when she was younger, so I found that to be interesting. But everyone involved in JonBenet's life did say that JonBenet loved to do the pageants. So just a little bit of information in case you are not familiar with her case. Alright, let's go ahead and get into this article here. This is a timeline of the investigation into the murder of JonBenet Ramsey. It is from Court TV, It was initially posted on January 19th, 2023, last updated January 24th, which was yesterday. Okay, here's a summary of the past 26 years of investigations, heartbreaks, suspicions, media frenzies, and unanswered questions. December 26, 1996. JonBenet Ramsey, 6, was found dead in the basement of her parents' home, which was along the 700 block of 15th Street in Boulder, Colorado. The child beauty queen had died the previous night but wasn't found until the following morning, according to ABC News. Her father, John Ramsey, found her body about 8 hours after her mother, Patsy Ramsey, said she discovered a ransom note demanding $118,000. They initially believed she had been kidnapped and called 911, even though the note said if they called police, their daughter would die. Okay, I want to interject a little bit of information here really quickly about the ransom note because I did not want to do a whole separate article on the ransom note, but this note was 3 pages long. That's important, okay? That was 3 pages long. It was very specific with the $118,000 ransom that it was asking for. The other thing that you need to know if you're not aware is that the paper that was used to write the note came from a notepad that belonged to Patsy Ramsey, and the pen that was used also was Patsy Ramsey's. The other thing that's very important about this note is that this writing was very, very similar to Patsy Ramsey's writing. So basically, it looked like she wrote the note or like she was trying to disguise her handwriting as not being hers. I think the police may have claimed, or somebody may have claimed, that someone else, whoever allegedly wrote the note, went to great lengths to make it look like Patsy's writing. And, I guess that's pretty much where the investigation went with it there. But there were just so many similarities to Patsy's writing on this note that it was very strange that it was ultimately disregarded so easily, that she may have had something to do with writing the note. So anyway, let's go ahead and get back into the article here real quick. Police arrived and began investigating. However, they did not properly secure the scene. Hours went by and police filed out, leaving just one detective who recommended John Ramsey search the house for clues. He found his daughter in the basement. "I knew instantly what I found. I found my daughter," John Ramsey told ABC News' Barbara Walters in a 2000 interview. "She was lying on a white blanket. The blanket was wrapped around her. Her hands were tied above her head. She had tape over her mouth. I immediately knelt down over her, felt her cheek, took the tape off, immediately off her mouth. I tried to untie the cord that was around her arms, and I couldn't get the knot untied." At 10:45 p.m., the Boulder County Coroner's staff removed JonBenet's body from the house, according to the Denver Post. December 31st, 1996, JonBenet was buried in Marietta, Georgia, which is the Ramseys' hometown. She was buried next to her half-sister who was killed in a car crash in 1992. January 1st, 1997, the Ramsey parents pleaded on CNN for help finding their daughter's murderer. And Patsy Ramsey said, "There is a killer on the loose," quote unquote. That was her quote. It was their first public comment on the case, according to the Denver Post. March 13th, 1997, it was announced that retired Colorado Springs detective Lou Smith would join the Boulder team working on the case. He worked the case from March 1997 through September 1998, according to the AP. The AP reported on evidence that he said indicated an intruder likely broke in and killed the young girl. Okay, so this was his evidence. Faint markings on a suitcase under a broken basement window on the wall under the window might be footprints. Smith theorized an intruder may have put his foot against the wall to steady himself while crawling through the window. Peanut-shaped foam packing material and leaves found in the basement might have been tracked inside by someone entering through a broken basement window. Fibers on a metal baseball bat found outside the Ramsey home matched a carpet found in the basement near the storage room where JonBenet's body was found. DNA evidence from JonBenet's fingernails and underpants indicated her attacker was a male. Marks on her face and back could have been made by a stun gun. Arapahoe County Coroner Michael Doberson said that after examining Smith's photos of the wounds, he agreed that a stun gun might have been used to subdue the girl. Boulder Police Chief Mark Beckner noted there was evidence contradicting the use of a stun gun, so somebody else thought there was no stun gun. April 18th, 1997, then Boulder District Attorney Alex Hunter publicly identified John and Patsy Ramsey as the focus of the investigation, according to the Denver Post. The couple maintained their innocence. June 1997, the Ramsey family moved out of Boulder and into a house in the suburbs of Atlanta, according to CNN. July 14th, 1997. According to portions of JonBenet's autopsy report released in July 1997, her skull was fractured by a vicious blow to the head, and she may have been SA'd before being strangled, according to the Associated Press. She had one ligature around her neck and one around her right wrist, and there were small amounts of dried blood, bruising, and abrasions in her private areas, according to the autopsy. An 8.5-inch fracture ran the length of the right side of her head. She also had bruises and abrasions on her shoulders, legs, and feet, according to the AP. More of the autopsy was published on August 13th of 1997, where authorities said the young girl was found on the basement's living room floor with her arms extended out and her head turned to the side. Her body was covered with a blanket and a Colorado Avalanche sweatshirt. A white synthetic cord was wrapped around her neck, and another length of cord was loosely tied around the right wrist over her sleeve of her knit shirt. The autopsy report said, according to the AP. Okay, remember that part. I'm going to come back to that. August 7th, 1998. Claiming the district attorney's office is thoroughly compromised, one of the original detectives assigned to investigate the slaying of JonBenet resigned in protest of this continuing travesty, according to the AP. Detective Steve Thomas, who had been on leave since late June 1998, tendered his resignation from the Boulder Police Department and accused the district's attorney office of sacrificing procedure for politics. In the letter, Thomas accused the district attorney's office of ignoring evidence collected by investigators, blocking police efforts to subpoena the parents' telephone and credit card records, and improperly sharing details of the case with Ramsey lawyers. Okay, now this is actually very interesting, right? Because one of the main investigators on the case said that it was thoroughly compromised. Boulder County grand jurors begin to investigate. If you want to continue to read the article, please do so. It's quite extensive. It gives you a lot of details. But I want to go back up here really quickly too. More of the autopsy report was published on August 13th, 1997, right? So they said that authorities said girl was found in the basement living room floor with her arms extended out and her head turned to the side. Her body was covered with a blanket and a Colorado Avalanche sweatshirt. Synthetic cord was wrapped around her neck and loosely tied around her one wrist. Well, that is contradictory to what John said, right? John is the one who found her in the basement. He said, "I knew instantly what I found. I found my daughter. She was lying on a white blanket. The blanket was wrapped around her. Her hands were tied above her head." See? Her hands were tied above her head. She had tape over her mouth. I immediately knelt down over her, felt her cheek, and I tried to untie the cord around her arms, but I couldn't get the knot untied. So John Ramsey is saying that JonBenet's arms were tied together, I believe, and above her head, whereas the autopsy report is saying that her arms were extended out to the side and only one wrist was tied. So I just find that to be an interesting contradiction. It seems strange to me that it would have that information in the autopsy report, because John Ramsey, being the one who found his daughter, would be the one who would have had to have told them what the scene looked like. Because what happened was he went down into the basement, he found his daughter, and he tells you that he compromised the scene, right? Because he touched the body. He removed the tape from her mouth. But what he doesn't tell you, or what it doesn't say here, is that John actually picked up JonBenet's body and he carried her upstairs to the living room. So he removed her from the original spot where her body had been lying, which obviously, is a compromised crime scene at that point. So anyway, though, that is one of the reasons that people actually suspected the Ramseys, is because they did move the body. And I don't necessarily think that John moved the body on purpose to compromise the crime scene. I think that he just reacted and wasn't really thinking about what he was doing. So over the years, outside of the Ramseys themselves, there have also been several other suspects in the case. And they've all kind of fizzled out through the years, but this next article that I have for you guys is in reference to this one particular man. And I thought that it was interesting because part of what I was able to see was just a slight flash of a man with long, light brown hair pulled back in a ponytail and facial hair of the person. This is a flash vision that I got of the person who attacked JonBenet. So this next article here talks about one of the suspects that they had originally had in the case, and his name was Gary Oliva, I believe is how you pronounce his name, and he was never arrested in conjunction to JonBenet's case, but he was arrested later in 2016. So this is an article from the Rolling Stone that talks about, basically this man is admitting, person who harms children, confesses to killing JonBenet. And this article is from January 11th of 2019. So just a few years ago, right? And like I said, this man was arrested in 2016 on charges of having inappropriate pictures of children. Okay, and here's what the article says. A longtime suspect in the 1996 murder of JonBenet Ramsey in Boulder, Colorado, has allegedly confessed to, quote-unquote, accidentally killing the 6-year-old in a series of letters sent to a former high school classmate, according to the Daily Mail. Gary Oliva, 54, is a convicted child harmer, currently serving a 10-year sentence in Colorado for possession of inappropriate pictures of children, but is up for parole in 2020. So remember, this was written in 2019, and I wasn't able to find out if he had gotten parole or if he had gotten denied. I couldn't find anything on that. So these letters that this man wrote, I'm not really going to go too much into what he actually wrote about JonBenet because it's pretty sick, but he says stuff like, I never loved anyone like I did JonBenet, and yet I let her slip and hit her head. He says, it was an accident. Please believe me. She was not like other kids. So he's basically saying that, yes, he did kill JonBenet, but it was an accident. In the letter that he wrote to this friend of his, Vale is the high school acquaintance of Oliva. Oliva's the suspect. He talks about JonBenet completely changed me and removed all evil from me. And then at the end of that, he says, yet by accident she died and it was my fault. So he's making a couple of somewhat cryptic references to JonBenet dying by accident that he didn't actually mean for it to happen, but yes, he did do it. But what I find most interesting about this article is that it says Vale has suspected his old high school buddy killed JonBenet for the last 22 years, ever since he received a disturbing phone call from Oliva shortly after the murder and before the case made national headlines. My suspicions began when Gary called me late at night on December 26, 1996. Vale, who lives in Ventura, California, told the Daily Mail he was sobbing, and he said, I hurt a little girl. I tried to get more information out of him. The only thing he told me was that he was in the Boulder, Colorado area. On December 27th, I read on the front page of my local newspaper, Girl 6, slain in Boulder, Colorado. I immediately called the Boulder Police Department and told them what I knew about Gary and what he had told me just days earlier. They didn't get back to me. 3 months later, I called the police again to find out what was going on in its investigation of Gary, but instead I was sent to a police answering machine set up for tips on the JonBenet case. I left a message on the recorded line, and again, I never heard back from investigators. So this is really strange to me because this should have been a key piece of information, right? What investigators actually ended up saying was that the details that Oliva had given about the murder were not consistent with the crime scene, which I want to know, how would you know that? Because the police aren't even the ones who found JonBenet's body. So anyway, though, I had said that it was this man, right, with this light brown hair pulled back in a ponytail, facial hair. And I know that this man's hair isn't necessarily light brown, but this was in 1990, or I'm sorry, the crime was in 1996, and his picture here is from 2016. So we're talking 20 years later. So I think that maybe his hair may have gotten darker, and obviously he's 20 years older. So he looks a little bit different than the person. I mean, he doesn't look different than the person I'm seeing. He looks the same. You know, like here he still has facial hair. It's just that it's gray now. And what I saw, it was blonde. Not blonde, but like, you know, light brown. So I don't know. I really feel like there's a lot of similarities to this person and the person that I'm getting flashes of in my visions as who the man was that actually attacked JonBenet. So anyway, though, you can go and read the rest of this article. I will make sure to have all the articles linked. And, oh, I'm sorry, one more thing. I almost forgot to mention something interesting down here. When he was arrested in 2016, Oliva had approximately 335 photos that had something to do with, and it says redacted, but it's JonBenet. He had 335 photos of JonBenet. He had photos of a shrine to JonBenet. So it's just very strange, very strange. And he was basically disregarded because allegedly the DNA that they had collected from the scene was not a match to Gary Oliva. But the DNA is believed to have been compromised. And I did actually find a video on that as well. And I will link that in the description as well. So if you have time, please go out and watch that video about the compromised DNA, because it is very informative and it's very interesting. And I just didn't want to include it in the video here because it was going to get quite long if I did that. So at any rate, there is one more article that I found at the last minute here that I wanted to share with you guys, just because I thought that it was very heartwarming, heartbreaking as well. And it gives you a little bit of an idea of the character of John Ramsey. So I'm not 100% certain how I feel about John Ramsey, but let me just go ahead and switch over to this article here really quickly and let you see what I'm talking about. So this is from December 24th, 2022. So just this past Christmas, JonBenet Ramsey's dad, John, reveals biggest regret about 6-year-old's final Christmas. All right, it says, "There's not always tomorrow. The father of tragic child beauty queen JonBenet Ramsey revealed his biggest regret about his daughter's final Christmas after she was given a new bike. We went out in the back alley and she rode it up and down the alley a couple of times," her dad John told the U.S. Sun of the 1996 holiday at the family's Boulder, Colorado home. But the heartbroken father said that instead of spending time with her as she rode, he rushed his excited 6-year-old daughter along, eager to get to their holiday meal with friends on time. He said, "Okay, we gotta go. We're going to be late for dinner," the now 79-year-old Ramsey told the outlet, to which she said, "Oh, Dad, please let me go just one more time." But I told her no, we'll do that tomorrow. That's so sad. The next morning, JonBenet was found dead in the basement of the family's home, sparking a decades-long murder mystery which saw each member of the family dogged by speculation that they were responsible for her death. Now, 26 years later, it's the hurtful memory of his daughter on her bike which haunts John. And that's what I remember vividly, her asking me to go just one more time and me telling her no, we'll do it tomorrow, he said. Of course, there was no tomorrow. It's a hurtful thought now. The Ramsey family has pushed in recent months for authorities to revisit JonBenet's killing, which has never been solved. But Christmas brings with it the pain of his missed opportunity for more joy with JonBenet. I had a mother write me years later, and she said, "Your loss made me take the extra 5 minutes when my child asked for my time because you don't know," he told the Sun. So that's another life lesson. Don't be so busy that you say we've got to wait until tomorrow. That's what I remember most from that day. JonBenet would be 32 years old now if she was still alive. So I just thought that that was very touching, very sad. I think obviously John has some regrets, as far as, at the very least, rushing her that day or not spending more time with her that day. I believe he owned his own business, so he was probably quite busy. They were quite wealthy. which kind of actually leads me into the next part. I know the video is getting a bit long, but I do have one more thing that I want to show you before I get into my actual vision and the feelings that I got around the case. And, you know, it's just something that I found interesting, and I thought that you guys would find it interesting too. If you don't want to watch this part, and just go ahead and skip right forward to my vision and things of that nature, then you can go ahead and skip over this. But this is actually a tour that I found of the Ramsey home. So like a video tour that was done, I think it was done like 6 or 7 years ago, but it shows the house. And the reason that I found it interesting is because when you see the pictures of the house from the front, it doesn't look like it's that big of a house. But when they show it from the back, the house is actually huge. And it's like 7,000 square feet. It's enormous. And it gives you a little bit more of an idea of how somebody could come into the house and take a child and murder them in the basement of that house and not have anybody hear anything, because it's just enormous. This is an actual, like not an interview, but like a news report. So I'm going to go ahead and play that news report. So it's going to have the video and the audio from that. If you want to skip over this and go straight to my vision, this video clip is 2 minutes and 42 seconds long. So just skip forward about, 2 minutes and 40 seconds, and then you'll get there into my vision. If you'd like to watch it, here it is.
The front of the home makes the house look much smaller than it is. It is a massive home, 7,000 square feet. The size comes from its length and height. It stretches back and upward on the lot. There are 4 floors in this home. JonBenet's body was found in this corner of the basement of the home. Her bedroom is here on the 2nd floor. This is the balcony outside her bedroom. Inside it is all white. It was a very colorful room with wall hangings, toys, stuffed animals, a bright-colored bedspread. This is JonBenet's bathroom. Next to the bathroom is the door leading directly from her bedroom to the balcony. To give you some perspective, JonBenet's bedroom is behind and above me. On the other end of the house is her brother Burke's bedroom. Above Burke's bedroom is where her parents' bed was. Shown from the outside of the home, this is JonBenet's bedroom. Across the house on the 2nd floor on the east end of the home is Burke's room, a room partially covered with wallpaper that has model airplanes. Above Burke's room is Patsy and John Ramsey's bedroom. Their bedroom stretched across most of the 3rd floor. Their bed was here, the opposite end of the house from their daughter's bedroom. The morning of December 26th, Patsy Ramsey says she walked from the bed and across the master bedroom, down the back staircase from 3rd to 2nd floor. At this point, she is a few steps from JonBenet's bedroom. She continued from the 2nd floor to the 1st floor on the spiral staircase. Patsy Ramsey told police she found the ransom note on one of the bottom steps of the spiral staircase. This is the much talked about spiral staircase in the Ramsey home. There are 9 outside doors in the Ramsey home. There are 104 windows, 100 of them open to the outside. There are a variety of locks on the doors and windows in the Ramsey home. Whoever killed JonBenet Ramsey walked down these stairs from the main floor to the basement. The killer turned right onto a small landing and then walked straight ahead to a room at the end of the hall. There was a plywood board here acting as a door. JonBenet's body was found in this room. It is roughed out concrete from floor to ceiling. Her mouth and wrists were wrapped in duct tape. There was a knotted rope around her neck. John Ramsey found his daughter's body in this room. He carried her up these stairs to the living room. The living room was the gathering place for the family and the police. A Christmas tree was here, decorations, the police, Patsy and John Ramsey, friends, and JonBenet's body. Paula Woodward, 9 News.
Just something that I thought everyone might find interesting. I found it interesting. I like the way that they showed you the exact detail of the house. You got to see the rooms. You got to see how far away they were from each other. And it was pretty easy to see that with as big as that house is, with the basement, the room that JonBenet was allegedly killed in, that it would be easy for someone to go down there all that way away from everyone else in the house and not have anyone hear anything or even be aware of anything, So, and then they also showed you exactly where Patsy Ramsey allegedly found the ransom note. So I just thought you guys might find that interesting. Okay, now as far as my actual visions around the case, I do have to say that I have always felt like Patsy Ramsey had something to do with JonBenet's death. And I'm not saying that she was directly involved in harming her or anything like that, but I have always felt like there was some kind of knowledge or involvement on her part. Obviously, I'm not the first person to suspect that because the parents initially were the suspects. But it was just the way, it was just the strange things, the fact that the ransom note was written on her paper with her pen, the fact that it was 3 pages long. Like, who does that? Who writes a 3-page ransom note? Usually they're very short and sweet and straight to the point. And it doesn't seem that unlikely to me that Patsy might have thought, for whatever reason, that she needed to write extensive, detailed note. Maybe, I'm not trying to be sexist or anything like that, but women sometimes put way too much thought into things like that, where I think as men, a lot of times will just be like, this is what I want, this is the point, let's just get it over with, but women put a lot of thought into those type of things. So, and once again, this is my opinion. This is just my speculation. As with all of my visions, with all of my videos about cases like this and stuff like that, I do not have any concrete evidence of any of this information that I'm providing to you guys. This is solely based on my opinion and my interpretations of what I'm feeling, okay, and what I'm seeing in my visions. So anyway, just a little bit of logic behind why people initially did think that Patsy was involved. So even just that note alone, to me, is strange. The thing that always kind of bothered me, though, the most was that I never really suspected that she actually did something to hurt JonBenet. I just thought that she was somehow involved in the whole situation. Like she knew more than what she was letting on. That started to make just a little bit more sense for me when I got this vision. So basically what I'm seeing is I see Patsy Ramsey, okay, and she's standing there, she's outside, she's next to a garage, and I don't know that it's a garage for the house that they actually lived in, because I actually see siding, like tan or beige colored siding. She's wearing a long coat, like a trench coat, a beige sort of long trench coat. And she's definitely trying to be sneaky, I guess you would say, because she's kind of looking around. You can tell that she's uneasy. Okay, this is a relatively brief vision. But anyway, though, I see her standing there. She's looking around. It seems like she's looking for someone. And once again, this is just my opinion and this is just my vision. And then I see a man come out of the shadows, and he doesn't come fully into the light. He's dressed in black. He has a hood on, so I don't know if he's wearing like a hoodie, but he definitely has a hood up, and they're having a conversation. I can't really hear what they're saying to one another, but Patsy is doing the majority of the speaking. And the only thing that I really hear that I'm 100% certain that I'm actually hearing is, "I'll take care of the note." Then they stand there and they talk just a little bit longer, and then the man kind of runs off into the dark, and Patsy looks around one more time, I think just to make sure that nobody's there, nobody's watching, and then she turns around and she kind of casually walks away. I know that that's not a lot. That's pretty much the extent of my vision, but I found that really interesting because she says, at least as far as what I'm hearing, my interpretation is, "I'll take care of the note." So something that I forgot to mention earlier, which I think is probably somewhat significant in the case, is that John Ramsey was actually affiliated in some way with Lockheed Martin. I'm sure everybody knows who Lockheed Martin is, but if you don't, they are basically one of the major producers of wartime supplies, I guess you could say. They make ammunition, weapons. I think they make tanks. Like, I think they provide pretty much all military surplus. I don't know that he actually worked for Lockheed Martin. I think that he actually had his own business and they just had direct contracts with Lockheed Martin. So it's just that there was an affiliation there. I think that might have been somewhat significant, not necessarily because of his position, but because of the fact that we're obviously dealing with significant amounts of money. Another reason that I mention that is because the $118,000 that was demanded as ransom for JonBenet, that just so happened to be the exact amount of the bonus that John Ramsey had gotten that year. So that's just to tell you, $118,000 for a bonus, these people must have a considerable amount of money if $118,000 is coming through for John just as a bonus. Okay, the rest of what I'm getting around the case is basically just some intuition, some feelings. Sometimes these things don't come to me necessarily as visions. They just come to me as a very intense, inclination, I guess I would say. So I think that what it comes down to for me is that what I believe, and, like I said 100 times, this is just my opinion, but I think that what actually happened was, I think that Patsy Ramsey hired, I don't know if it was Gary Oliva, the man that I said I think did it. I don't see him specifically in my vision. The only time that I see him is in the basement with JonBenet. So I'm making an assumption that the man that I see Patsy Ramsey speaking to is Gary Oliva. But I don't know that. She could be speaking to another man. It could be a second man. So the ransom note claimed that there was more than one person involved. I don't know that. I think that it is probably one guy and that she was talking to Gary Oliva. But like I said, I could be wrong, and she could have been talking to a third party. Maybe the man that she's talking to is the person that got Gary Oliva involved. Anyway, that's all just speculation. Regardless of whether she was speaking to Gary Oliva directly or not, I really, really feel that Patsy Ramsey, for whatever reason, hired this person to kidnap JonBenet. She did not want her hurt. She did not want her harmed. She just wanted her abducted. And I know that sounds bizarre, but I think the reason that she wanted that to happen is because I think that it might have been true that JonBenet did actually enjoy doing the pageants. But I don't think that Patsy enjoyed doing the pageants with JonBenet. So a lot of people are like, oh, she pushed JonBenet into doing it because she used to do pageants. I don't think so. I don't think that was the case. I think that JonBenet really did like doing the pageants and that Patsy was tired of it and that she didn't want to do it. But she, maybe John had said, well, don't crush her dreams. Let her do that if that's what she really wants to do. I don't know for sure, but it feels that way to me. So I feel that basically Patsy Ramsey was very jealous of JonBenet. She was jealous of how pretty she was. She was jealous of how talented she was. And I think that she was jealous of John and JonBenet's relationship because she mentioned several times throughout the years that she was a daddy's girl, that JonBenet was daddy's girl. Anyway, I really just feel like it was a jealousy sort of thing. I think that there's a possibility that maybe she wanted to end the pageants and she knew that JonBenet really didn't want to do that. So she thought that if she got abducted and she could see this isn't good, this is dangerous, somebody did this to our little girl because of these pageants, then John would insist at that point that JonBenet stop, and then she wouldn't have to deal with it anymore. Maybe that's not the case. Maybe it was for some other reason. Maybe she was trying to manipulate John in some way. Patsy was trying to manipulate John in some way because the ransom note was addressed to John. So I think that it's pretty obvious that this all did have something to do with John. And I don't think that Patsy ever intended for anything truly horrible to happen to JonBenet. I think that she thought that maybe somebody was going to come in, they were going to take her, they were going to whisk her away to some place where she wasn't going to be harmed, and then within a couple of days they would have JonBenet back. And whatever problem she was trying to resolve, or whatever manipulation she was trying to use against her husband John, would have been resolved at that point. And I know that that's sick. I know that that's messed up, that a mother would want her child to be abducted. But you can't presume to know what's going on in people's heads. You can't presume to know what's going on in the mind of someone who would harm their child. So, I don't know. That's just what I'm getting. That's just what I'm seeing, what I'm feeling. I'm interested to know if anything else is ever going to come of this case. So I will definitely check back with in with it every once in a while to see what comes out. But yeah, it's a very strange case indeed. So I don't know that I really have anything more to add about the case at the moment, but like I said, I will be checking back in with it, and I don't know if this is ever going to be able to be solved with all of the corruption, apparently, and mishandling that's gone on with the case. At any rate, I believe that I have rambled enough for this one, so I am going to go ahead and wrap this up. As always, thank you so much for listening. I will be talking to everybody again very, very soon. Bye.